Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to the February edition of Molten Music Monthly. Don't know about you, but February has been freezing and flipping busy. I'm doing this like first thing in the morning because in a minute I've got to go and homeschool my kids. But it does feel like we're emerging finally out of this, or at least we're getting to some kind of semblance of that. But anyway, here's what's been happening this month. Make Noise gives us some drones. Glitchmachines shares their tic-tacs. Cherry Audio gives us a disappointing polysynth. Pluto looks promising. Barullo Ciobra makes everything awesome. You can plug a Kalimba into your Euro rack. Orbita puts a sequencer on a turntable. Jumble Henge will do all the mixing for you. Novation's new circuit is a bit like the old circuit. Klerhaim N1 synthesizer sounds 99% more rubbish than any other synth that's out there. On purpose. Ableton Live 11 is the same, with more. Erica Synths lands a joystick. Intellijel upgrades Metropolis with an X. Tracktion Waveform Free 2021 is the free door we've been waiting for. Mutable Instruments redefines ambient music with beads. QuBit Cascades a few envelopes. LA Circuits grooves out some cool modules. And Gforce releases an 8-voice Oberheim. But first, our friend Ben Jordan has just released a video that I think everyone should go and see. Ben is a fascinating YouTuber and musician who tackles some of the more interesting topics with such, I don't know, he's just really good, right? He's done this video asking why there aren't more female producers. Now, of course, you may be thinking that as a cisgender white bloke, what on earth? What business does he have in talking about such things? Well, you know, we all have a business to talk about such things. It's important to get these things out and talked about. And particularly, I think, by the most privileged gatekeeping people that there are. People like myself. But regardless, Ben's approach is always to let the science and the facts and the research speak for him, and so he invited a whole bunch of women onto his channel. He's done tons and tons of research, talking, and lets it all really speak for itself. So even if you think you're the most, right on bloke in the world, you should go and watch this video. It's enlightening, it's educational, it's fantastic, and hopefully it encourages more and more change within our ridiculously masculine and stupid industry. Make Noise has come up with this bewitching synthesizer drone glitch machine they're calling Strega. It's been made in collaboration with that guy from Nine Inch Nails. No, not that guy, the other guy. And perfectly fits that little Make Noise mold of being sort of weird and strange and confusing and impenetrable and baffling while being creative and awesome, and the sort of thing that people can spend weeks with trying to unearth exactly what it's all about. And what is it all about? Now, I don't really know. It's some kind of alchemy, some kind of audio experiment. It's built very much in the same form factor as their Zero Control and their No Coast, and so it will sit perfectly with those little puppies and will just pulse and glow and throb its way through glitchy drone loveliness. It's covered in these sort of touch bridges that bring modulation and route all of the sources into all of the destinations, and you can interact with it with your hands. A bit like an instrument, I suppose. Apparently the sort of thing you need to do is to spill the tonic into time and let time decay through the filter of your life or something. It looks really groovy. It's probably just too hip for me. I can't quite cope with the level of coolness one requires in order to interact with it properly. But it's undoubtedly a fascinating box. Glitchmachines Tactic. This looks like an interesting thing. This is all about evolving sequences and metamorphic rhythms, I think. It gives you a panel of 8 sample slots, 4 lanes of sequencing, and lots of per step modulation. So you have a trigger sequencer to trigger the various samples within your loaded sample bank. You then got 2 modulation sequencers for moving stuff about. And then there's a generative sequencer, which is all about randomization and generating the possibility of the probability of something going on. It's 16 steps of sampling mayhem and modulation madness, all wrapped up in a generative randomization of awesome radicalness. It just looks great, right? Put in some samples, sequence the heck out of them, move them all about, and there you go. There you are, there's a track. Awesome, what a load of fun. That's the Glitchmachines Tactic. Cherry Audio have released a couple of really awesome software synths recently. The DCO 106 and the 2600 one, fantastic, just spot on the money, fabulous bits of stuff. Their latest release is called the Polymode, and yeah, not so much. I mean, it's a fabulous emulation, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to be rude about Cherry Audio in any way, because they've done some fantastic work with those other 2 previous synths and with Voltage Modular. It's just that this one, I don't really want it. Thanks very much. The Polymode is a model of the Polymoog, which is a crappy old Moog synthesizer, which was built like an organ. It's essentially an organ sounding kind of thing. Now, many people like these sorts of things. Of course they do. Fantastic. Undoubtedly fantastic. It just doesn't really float my boat. But it's definitely worth talking about because Cherry Audio do great work. And if a Polymoog is the thing that you're after, then the Polymode is absolutely going to nail and capture that for you. It's just a bit organ-y, you know? Organ. In fact, the funny thing about it is that the original had this big shelf on the top. So you've got like your keyboard, a bunch of controls, and then this flat area that was actually indented where you could put other synthesizers, which is exactly what that mini Korg 700 thing was all about. It sits in one of those spaces and gives you that synth lead thing above your organ. It was a great design decision by Moog to do that thing, to allow this space for you to build your mini Moog and other bits and pieces on top of this polyphonic synthesizer organ thingy. The Polymode, of course, isn't exactly the polyphonic sort of synthesizer that we expect or we seem to associate with that these days. This was a divide down polyphony, and so it's kind of a weird hybrid paraphonic kind of affair where you don't have individual voices, you just have the polyphony because of the dividing down of the oscillators across absolutely every single note. And Cherry Audio have captured all of the nuance and excitement of that hybrid form of synthesis. It's only $29, so you know it's worth a punt if you're even vaguely interested in that kind of synthesizer. Pluto. Now this is a lovely little thing. It's just a little synthesizer with a couple of beautifully coloured knobs, a couple of patch sockets, patching into each other. A little modular synthesizer. What could not be lovely about that? It has a pair of digital voices inside that can be all sorts of different waveforms, has a couple of sequencers in order to run things about. It's just completely palm-sized and adorable. And you have 5 channels of modulation which are all named after the moons of Pluto. I wonder if it's like that. There was this other software synthesizer that's glimmering in the back of my memory that would take its modulation from the orbit of the actual planets. I'm not sure this does that. There's a spacey delay at the end and some glitch effects and bits and pieces, and it's all very much about low-pass gates. It's not a filter-driven thing. It's an attempt at a tiny little buchla box. It looks very cool. It's by a company called Molten Sounds and is still coming soon. Now this is the best thing ever. It's fair to say. The Barullo Ciobra. Never know quite sure which way round. I'm always calling it the wrong way round of the thing. Anyway, what is it? It's this fella here. It's a distortion module. It's awesome. You stick anything through it and it's awesome. Doesn't matter what it is, put some drums through. It's awesome. Put a bass line through. Awesome. Put some pads. I don't have any pads, but if I were to put pads through, it would sound awesome. It's a gnarly, raw of a distortion that feedbacks onto itself, that throws out these tones and these noises to the point where you forget what it was that you put in and you're going, where is this noise coming from? It's fantastic. It's huge. It's amazing. I mean, I haven't done anything other than plug a couple of things in because it has a patch bay for modulation and strange things that you can do. I've just been hanging on the feedback knob, man. You just plug something in, dial up the drive, and go wah, wah, oh, woo, and it just makes this tone. It's, you know, it's everything that I like about hitting the dirty channel on a guitar, and you just bang in that power chord and scratch away, and that's fantastic. This is the same as that. It's the same feeling. It's the same sense that you are breaking down barriers and boundaries and exploding off into space in some kind of extremely angry and yet righteous fashion. Yeah, the Ciobra. Grah, grah. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. If you want a sound example, I used it a lot in my performance for the SoCal Synth Society, which is on the YouTube channel, and I used it on the drums. It's just got an 808 kick, right, and a clap coming through, but you don't hear that. All you hear is it's just the best. It's just the best. I need to do a proper review video on it soon, and I will. The problem is every time I sit down to use it, it's just too much fun to actually then think about talking about it. You just want to keep on playing, and that's a sign of a good module. I think you'll find. So Kalimba and Eurorack, what am I talking about? Well, you know those Kalimbas, thumb piano things, yeah? Ding, 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 ding. It's actually a very Euroracky, synthy kind of sound. You get that kind of thing out of the plates or the braids or those kinds of plinky plonky sounds. You get them out of physical modelling modules. So it's a sound which is already sort of exists in a synthesized way, but why not plug a real one in? I mean, it's a bit more human, a bit more organic, and can very much match up and meet the expectations of your Eurorack as it flows through, it gets delayed, it gets glitched, gets beaded, for instance. What a great idea. I mean, it's not a new idea. I mean, I have an instrument interface. All I've got to do is stick a microphone in front of anything. You know, it could be a kalimba, could be anything. It could be a twanging ruler on the side of a desk, and I can have that flowing through my Eurorack. However, Error Instruments, God bless them, because we love Error Instruments over here in my house. They're just fantastic. Everything they do is fantastic. I mean, it's as noisy, crazy nonsense that you can't really use for anything, but flipping fantastic. I love their stuff. This one, you have to come and have a look at it. The idea for this was to take, I guess, a locally made kalimba, local to them at any rate, and wherever it is that they are, and set it alongside a instrument amplifier module. So a little module, connect the two together, bish bash bosh, off you go. The kalimba comes with a little contact mic inside, and weirdly, the output is on the bottom. So where you would sit it down on the desk and play it, the output is actually on the underneath, so you have to hold it in your hand. But I guess it's a thumb piano. You would hold it, I'm guessing. Yeah, I suppose you would. So, well, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about then. I'm no expert in these sorts of instruments. But so you got your little module. You got a patch cable going from your kalimba to the module, and then it goes through your stuff. Simple as that, really. Why am I talking about this? Oh, I don't know. I just thought it was fun. Like I say, Error Instruments can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. And so anything that encourages us to combine real world organic stuff with the machine, I think is well worth checking out. Orbita. It's a beautiful thing. It's like a turntable with sort of M&Ms on top, or Smarties, or something of that nature. It spins round. It has an arm which detects the colours. The colours are then converted into notes. The notes are connected into music. The music converted into our very soul. So you've got a turntable, buttons on it. It's a sequencer. It's quite genius, really, to the point of it being, why hasn't anybody done this before? Or actually, no, we have done it before, just in mechanical pianos and things like that, I think. Just a spinning disc that you stick these beads on. I think they're magnetic because you can sit it up sideways and have it go a bit like a washing machine. So you stick them on there, and then they do things. Nice. I really like it. I think it's a nice, lovely idea. They do have plans for a CV conversion kit for it, so otherwise it's just kicking out MIDI at the moment. But I like the way you could sit it down on a coffee table next to a bit of a synth, and it could just sit there and play. You know, you could have it at a party, a nice party, not the sort of party where people are kicking things over and pouring beer into your gear, but a nice, relaxed party. People could push the little magnetic beads around and it could create different sounds and different tones. Nice. Apparently there's 4 tracks, is that right? Where depending on how close it is to the middle, depends on the track. And I'm just thinking about, well, wouldn't the middle ones be going faster than the outside ones? No, of course they wouldn't. Because that's not how a wheel works. But it feels like it does. It's travelling further, but it's still going underneath the needle at the same time, if you see what I mean. It's not a needle, it's some kind of sensor. This is by a company called Playtronica, who have already created a couple of kind of human interaction type synthesizers. There's this one where you have to have 2 people, one on one side, one on the other, and it's kind of like a thumb war with each other, which is nice. They're out there in Russia somewhere, I think, and it takes them a while to get stuff together. So this should be appearing on Kickstarter at some point, but it is dragging a little bit now. It's been on the cards for ages, I feel. They almost had a prototype out at the virtual NAMM show, but it wasn't working, sadly. But hopefully we'll hear more from them soon. The Jumble Henge. Initially perturbed by this one. It's a what? It does what? What does it do? It's like a mixer without having to mix. Mixing in Eurorack is one of those things that frustrates me enormously. It uses up a lot of space. You can never seem to quite get it right, and you become overly obsessed with the mixing side of it when really you want to be playing with the more creative side of it. What the Jumble Henge does is say, look, forget all that, just plug everything in here and I will make it spatially interesting. And it's like, right, that sounds great. Is that all right? I'll just... Oh, the kids are starting to print out the stuff. Do you find this, that we just have to print it out? I mean, I know homeschooling is fabulously electronic, fabulously online, and Google Classrooms, all that kind of thing, where you can do it actually on the screen. But no, I mean, we're a very techno savvy household, but we have to print it out. It's just so much easier. So as I was saying, yeah, the Jumble Henge is like got 16 inputs, 4, 4, 3, 3, and then a 2 or something. The idea being that you've got like a row of 4, and the one on the left is going to be panned to the left, one on the right panned to the right, and so on, moving in towards the centre. The ones at the top are kind of higher pitch stuff, and then mid pitch, and then lower pitch stuff. So it also filters it to a degree, or EQs it, perhaps would be better, so that you get a little bit of frequency separation as well as spatial separation. It's completely simple, completely genius. I don't know why I don't have one already. I need to sort that out. It's the sort of thing that would pair brilliantly with like a Muton or a DivKid mute, something that you can just drop stuff in and out of and then use that for the panning and spaciness of it all. It's great. What a thing. I kind of wish I had a headphone socket, because then I could replace my output module with just that. But as it is, 16 sources potentially, which is more than enough, that then going into an output module and you are sorted. The Jumble Henge is £229 and it's from ALM Busy Circuits. You know, I still don't know if you call it ALM or Busy Circuits or Busy Circuits ALM, or if they're the same or different, or whether it matters. It's just one of those little things of confusion that buzzes around in the world that I just can't be bothered to resolve. Last month we saw that Novation were about to release a new circuit. Very exciting. The circuit is a great thing. It's the Groovebox, I think, that has introduced far more people back to hardware than anything else. It managed to somehow bridge that gap between having something really cool on your computer, something Ableton based, that kind of thing. It felt like that. It felt cool enough and hipster enough for you to move into this what seemed like an old-fashioned world of hardware, but it did it in a cool and futuristic kind of way. Does that make sense? So it didn't look like a crappy old Groovebox like a Roland MC303 or anything like that. It looked something like futuristic. It looked like a push. It looked like a launch pad, something that you could feel like you're really in with a hipster Ableton crew, but you're doing it externally. You're moving externally using synths, using drums, and it grooves and it looks good and it feels good. And so it hit that perfect place, I think, between software and hardware. Nice. Sold a shed load of them, I imagine, and now they've finally released an update. I mean, it's interesting because they've updated it a lot over the years. They've crammed in all sorts of functionality into the circuit through their component software and different firmwares, to the point to make it extraordinary, really. And so they've kind of taken all of that, everything that they've learnt that people like to use in the updates that they've done, and they've re-engineered it into a new one, which is very much like the old one. I mean, to the point where it's pretty much identical. I mean, the look of it is somehow sleeker, somehow nicer. They've shaved a bit off the bottom. They've made it thinner. They've put in rechargeable batteries as opposed to a battery compartment. And they've made all of the buttons on it sleeker and squarer and nicer. And it's just a good, decent upgrade on what was already a good product. They've brought some of the cooler new stuff to the fore. So there's proper buttons for different things that there weren't before. I can't tell you exactly what it is. Probably something to do with sampling, I should think. And they've also bumped up the connections. So on the back now you get MIDI in, out and through. You get 2 MIDI sequencer tracks alongside the internal sequencing and drum machine. And you get audio inputs that you can use to run stuff through the internal filter and effects. It doesn't actually do sampling, as far as I can tell. There's another one, the circuit rhythm, I think it's called, which is going to be out in the summer, which was also leaked at the same time last month. But that's not going to be with us yet, and that is the one that I believe does actual sampling. But the circuit tracks can handle samples off an SD card. So yeah, it looks great, no doubt. Sounds great. It's going to inspire a whole new generation of people to move out of their computers into the possibility of grooveboxes and hardware, and then because it can run external other things, other synths and bits and pieces will start turning up. I predict Klerhaim N1. Now this is a bit of a weird one. Now I'm sure they don't mean anything by it, but they kind of come across a bit, what's the word? Don't know, maybe I shouldn't say the word. But these people, Eplex7 DSP, I think they're called, have released this virtual analog synthesizer, and they've launched it with a marketing campaign that basically says, yeah, soft synths, right? They're crap. All of them, they're rubbish. They just don't cut it, man. They're just awful. Oh, awful on my ears. I can't believe it. They're also pristine and digital and stuff. Whereas what we've done, we've invented this idea where you can model vintage circuits. And we've done that with every single capacitor and resistor within this virtual synthesizer. And then we've made it sound slightly crappier. So when you play our fantastic N1 software synthesizer, it will sound like a broken synth that you found in the garage 20 years ago. And that's authenticity. So yeah, I mean, it sounds right. It sounds a bit raw, gnarly, certainly has a lot of grit and stuff in there. It's just this kind of attitude that everything before us has been really, really crap, and we are the only ones who have any kind of authentic grasp on modeling technology, whereas pretty much all software synths these days have elements of circuit modeling and circuit behavior modeling and computer models of what happens to a circuit when a circuit meets a circuit. You know, it's all in there. You haven't invented anything. Sorry. As they say, it says, do not be confused with marketing bullshits. Use your ears. Yeah, all right, right. Well, as I say, you know, it sounds flipping printing. But as I say, it sounds genuinely crappy, you know, in a good way. It does sound all right. They've done a half-decent job of creating a vintage-sounding, characterful, gnarly, analog modeled synthesizer like a lot of, like a lot of other ones out there. Now, what I do like about all this printing is that it is 9 o'clock. I'm supposed to have been done with this filming by now so that I can make sure that they're all up and running and doing their work. And they're just getting on with it because they're fantastic. They're fantastic, these kids. They're just brilliant. They do me proud. See, and I'll get back to the house in a moment to put the kettle on. They'll be like, oh, shut up, Dad, I'm on a Zoom. Anyway, Klerhaim N1. It's 30 quid. It's for Windows. Go and check it out. There's probably a trial or something. And if you like gnarly synths, then this is the one for you. But just you know, just go easy on the hyperbole is what I would say. Ableton Live 11 is with us. How exciting. How exciting. You know what, I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. I mean, I love Ableton to a degree. I've been with it a long time. I've never really got into the depths of it all because all of the exciting stuff seems to be around the MSP stuff, the Max for Live, the complexity within the devices. And I never seem to have found the time really to get in particularly deep with it. And every time I try out sort of the inbuilt sounds and stuff, they always seem a little bit kind of flat and simple. But undoubtedly that session interface is unparalleled and fantastic. And it's awesome that they've worked in a new version. What's new about it? I can't really remember. I mean, I've installed it and I opened it up and it looks exactly the same as the previous version. It said something about, ooh, new recording audio. What? And using software synths. Really? So, I don't know. I think there's going to be loads and loads of people out there talking an awful lot about it because it has a massive user base of really intelligent, clever, and people far cooler than I am. But probably the three key things are MPE support, which is great. Comping, so comping in the arrangement view so you can do different takes of stuff and comp it together. Excellent. That's like a catch-up feature which everybody else has been doing for years. But now Ableton is there too, which is great because I think one of its failings is it's never really been taken seriously as a tracking DAW, as a multi-track audio recording DAW. It's always its focus and its brilliance is around that session view. So this is one of those nods to trying to get it to be taken a little bit more seriously as a proper DAW, and that's a good thing. And there's something along the lines of probability sequencing, which is absolutely what Ableton is all about, and there's probably already been there through Max for Live type devices. But now it seems that it's built into the actual interface. I need to probably go and have a bit of a play with it just to see if I can find out. Erica Synths release another one of these huge system thingies called the Dada something system control quadraphonic something or other. It does a big console thing, right? A load of their fusion modules inside and a whole whack of joysticks. The joystick, that's the interesting thing. I mean, you know, I'm never going to be able to afford a massive Erica Synths rig, but within these massive rigs that they do for, you know, for real serious interesting sound design type people, there's a couple of modules that usually appear around these sorts of things which you could grab and use very interestingly in your own rig, and the joystick is one of those. There's been joysticks before, we've seen them before, and I really haven't sat down to see whether this is any better or any different, but I like it anyway. Is that all right? What I like about it is the fact that it has 4 channels of stuff, 4 recordable channels of modulation. So you can get your joystick, have that stuck into 2 things. You've got an X and a Y movement, and you can go waggity wag wag bap, and then that movement is recorded and is now spinning out through your rack doing interesting things. I love the ability to record modulation. I think it's a fascinating and vital part of your rack that we ignore a lot. We tend to just plug in an LFO and expect that to do all the work, when LFOs are actually really quite boring. I mean, they do lock into something. There's something about a slow change that we really enjoy. But I also like the idea of being able to wang in, if you pardon the expression, something of my own. I like that. So 4 channels of that within this single device, letting you control 8 parameters, I suppose. It can also generate a bit of noise. It can generate some randomization and a sine wave out of some of the outputs. You know, they build in a lot of functionality that you wouldn't have expected in a device like this. But it's stuffed in there. They stuff in as much as they can. It makes it more and more useful. Intellijel have upgraded the Metropolis. This is interesting. This is kind of, in some respects, oh, you can't quite see that, is in response, I imagine, to the re-emergence of the M185 by RYK Modular. The person who originally came up with the idea that Intellijel then licensed to make Metropolis. So they've now made Metropolix, so it's Metropolis with an X on the end. And well, it's similarly sized, funnily enough, but they've packed in a whole bunch of extra functionality and a really nice looking screen that's very reminiscent of the black sequencer, actually. Essentially, it's the same deal. Got 8 sliders and then a pulse count slider switch and then gate patterns associated with that. One of the things that I don't quite understand, I mean, you've got your 8 notes, so you've got an 8-step sequence. Let me try to explain this. You have an 8-step sequence, but you have a pulse count associated with each step. So if you put the pulse count to 1, you've got 8 steps that just go through. But as you increase the pulse count, it means that that note sounds once, twice, up to 8 times. So bing, bing, bing. And it's not ratcheting, it's just repeating its note. And because of that, the sequence gets longer and shorter depending on what you put it on. And that can do really interesting things to the melodies and the track that you're working on. You can also restrict it so it doesn't change its length as you add more pulses. It just takes more off the end in order to keep it organized and structured within what you're doing. But the other thing you have is these gate patterns, and the gate patterns dictate whether it sounds, it doesn't, whether it's every other one that it sounds or just one within that lot. So it ends up, rather than being these repeat pulses, it ends up being space between them and rhythms. That's very, very interesting. Now on the M185, the new one, there's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 8, I think, different gate patterns. On the Metropolis, the original, there was 4. On the Metropolis X, there's still 4. And that to me seems like a weird missed opportunity to expand on those gate modes, because if you've got 8 pulses on the M185, you can have it go do nothing, 1 pulse, then nothing, on, off, off, on, off, tied or randomized, or stuff like that. Whereas you don't have that many options on a Metropolis X. And that's just weird. Don't mean to go on about that particular missing thing that they didn't do. It just really struck me as a strange thing. But otherwise, it's a great upgrade on the original. You've now got 2 tracks of stuff going on that you can swap between. It's got this screen which really shows you what's going on, and you can turn things on and off much better. It has slide, it has ratcheting, it has probability, and you've got these 8 lanes of modulation that you can route to things internally or out of the 2 CV outputs to external stuff. There's also CV inputs to allow you to modulate stuff from outside. Has a couple of extra interesting features. One of them is called the accumulator, and what that does is on these note repeats, it then starts changing the pitch of those. So rather than just having the same note sounding, you can make it start climbing in octaves or in fifths or in whatever it is you define that scale to be. So you get these little sort of trills and movements, and it's really interesting because as things cycle round, it can be different and it can change every time. So your notes that you might have dialed in are then getting these added variations as you go round. Very interesting. I really like that feature. Another one is this loopy thing where you can fire off little sequences by pressing buttons. Yeah, interesting. Sort of performance mode kind of stuff. So it looks like they've done a marvelous job on this upgrade to Metropolis. I mean, I think seeing Metropolis in action was one of the things that really drew me to Eurorack. I thought it was a fantastic device, this playfulness, and I've very much enjoyed having an M185 in my rack, which I don't use anywhere near enough. I need to get back into that. But then, you know, who has the time for anything? But I would say that one of the things that the M185 does is that it has everything out on the front panel. There's no real menu system. There's a tiny bit in there just to get to some of the extra functions and the setup. But with the Intellijel one, there's a lot of buttons. There's a screen. There's a lot of what looked like to me heavy button mashing, holding, twisting in order to get to various functions. And that doesn't appeal particularly. But then if you want something which is deep and versatile, then that's the kind of interface you're going to have to deal with. But anyway, if you've never tried this type of sequencer before, it's well worth giving it a go. Tracktion Waveform Free 2021 is the latest free version of Tracktion. I've got a lot of time for Tracktion. I think it's a great DAW, and their philosophy of releasing an older version as the free version, I think is totally awesome, because what you get is you get their flagship DAW just a few versions old, which a few years ago would have been their most professional DAW, and you get that for free. At least I think that's what they're still doing. That's certainly what they used to do, but now they've sort of disguised that a little bit because they don't call it the same thing anymore. But as far as I can make out working about it, the Waveform Free doesn't have any restrictions on it at all. It has everything that I think Waveform 9 used to have. I think we're on that 9, 10, sort of 8 maybe. I don't know. One of those sorts of versions. So it has all of the VST support, all the mixing, all the plugins, all the editing, all the high-end stuff that we would have been using a few years ago anyway. It looks like this time around they've put in some extra special stuff to kind of update it so it looks more like the latest version and has a few of those features in there as well, you know, just for fun and because they can. And really I'm highlighting it because it is by far the best free DAW out there. You should go and get it if you're looking for something on a budget. And if you're waiting for Behringer's free DAW, then they've already said that it's not going to be out probably this year. It'll probably be next year, but we shall see. But right now, Waveform Tracktion Free is there. You can use it, you can make music, make an album, take over the world. Fantastic. Clouds 2 is here. It's called Beads, a texture synthesizer from Mutable Instruments, and everybody's got one. It's sold out already everywhere, I think almost instantly. I was lucky enough to see the announcement, you know, seconds after it was made, and so straight over to MatTech Modular, bam, I'll better have one. I mean, it's one of those things. I don't actually have many Mutable Instruments modules. In fact, all I do have is their VCAs, funnily enough. Whereas I really admire and like everything that they do. I think they just do a marvellous job of producing some of the most elegant and interesting modules, which are of course massively popular, which is kind of one of the reasons I've avoided them. Because, I don't know, there's a lot of people out there making videos, there's a lot of people making music in modular these days, and I don't really want to be the same as everybody else, and so I've kind of avoided getting braids or plats or rings, you know, all of these common Mutable Instruments modules, not because they're not awesome, because they are. I just want to spend my time and my money on other things, on alternatives, you know, in order to explore something else. However, I did back in the day get a Clouds, and I didn't like it very much at all. It's one of the most celebrated modules out there. Everybody has it. It's fantastic, apparently. And it keeps getting remade because it's open source. It gets made into all sorts of different modules, different versions of it. There's other firmwares, you know, and you're supposed to love it. And I didn't. I mean, I think it might have something to do with granular synthesis. I don't know that I'm actually that into granular synthesis. I don't really know what that means. I mean, I try things out and I play with stuff and I like it, I don't like it. I don't know. Granular stuff, I'm never entirely sure what I'm trying to achieve with that. So why then would I get a Beads? Well, I thought, I mean, I can't be that everybody else can't be wrong, can they? I must just be an idiot and I'm not using it properly. So I figured I'll give it another go. I'll give it a go with a new version, because I know that Emily Gillett, the person behind Mutable Instruments, was never very happy with Clouds. It was never everything that she hoped it would be, and so I felt the same. I felt an affinity with that, and so she decided with Clouds 2 to essentially fix it and make it what she wanted it to be. And that appeals to me. And I can say with some confidence that she's achieved that. The reason being is that you can plug something into this, you can turn a knob, and you can sense something happens, and then you can undo it and dial it in and dial it out. Couldn't do that with Clouds. With Clouds, you'd plug stuff in, you'd turn knobs, and have no idea what was going on or what effect it seemed to have. The reverb depth, you know, I could handle that. Everything else was like, I've no clue what any of this is doing. With Beads, it does have elements of that, I have to say, but I can move that knob and then move this one, and it has a noticeable, quantifiable effect where I go, oh, okay, that sounds like that. I dial it, oh yeah, it still sounds like that. Good. So that has really appealed to me so far. Other than that, no, I still have no clue what I'm doing, but I will spend a bit of time with it. And who knows, I might even do a video on it. I don't know. I mean, there's hundreds of videos out there already of people doing a far better job than I'm ever going to do with it. But I thought it might be fun. It might be fun. I might line it up next to Data Bender, which is another one of those baffling, mysterious things that takes a little bit of effort to get something that makes sense out of it. Maybe running those two together would be interesting. And then stuff it all into the magneto, which I still don't understand, and just get some kind of noise out the other. Fantastic. But regardless, it's going to be a massive seller. Everyone's going to be using it. It's going to be scattered all over. ambient music for all time, I imagine, and it's a super job. And I think Emily should be mighty proud that she got out such an awesome module in the way that she has. And this last year of releases has been quite extraordinary. She's really sorted a few things out, released some classy, elegant modules, and if this is the last thing that she ever does, I think her legacy is pretty much assured. I hope she does more. I hope Mutable Instruments still continues on. I've heard rumours that this is the last module she's going to be releasing, but who knows? Who knows what happens with that, and I wish her all the best either way. Speaking of QuBit, they've just released another module, another bit of nonsense called Cascade. This is interesting. I mean, it's baffling again because it's QuBit. You never really quite know what any of this stuff is about until you get your hands on it and can actually dig into it. They seem to enjoy this idea of releasing a module with a small bit of explanation and absolutely no sound demos or videos of any kind. So you're left thinking, all right, well, it looks kind of nice and I like the darkness and the futuristicness of it, and the naming is always interesting, and the functionality is kind of, oh, well, I don't know, I don't know, sounds a bit strange. Is it interesting? I'm not entirely sure. Cascade is like an over-functioning envelope. It's an envelope, but it does a lot of them. It ratchets envelopes, this cascade idea, I suppose. It can do AD envelopes, ASR envelopes, ADSR envelopes. In fact, once you start looking at it, you can see that it's a very multifunctional thing, to the point that they're using the DAISY chip, the Electrosmith DAISY microprocessor on the back, which they also have in the Data Bender as well, and some of their other bits and pieces. And as far as I can work out, they are starting to use that as a DSP platform that they are opening up. And so they're suggesting the possibility of it being reprogrammable into other things. Now that of course has an impact on the front panel and the positioning of the knobs and the labeling of stuff if things are going to change. How usable is all that going to be? Don't know. They haven't said much about it so far. But the Cascade also includes a VCA, it includes some kind of sidechain compressor type thing going on. So it's slightly strange functionality. It's an envelope, it ratchets, it has a VCA. It also has a noise generator inside that can create hi-hat sounds and snare sounds and such like. So can you see the multifunctionality aspect of this, which I don't think is properly explored or explained really yet. It's like, I kind of feel that QuBit need to go, this is a multifunctional reprogrammable module. You can stick all these different algorithms in it and it can do these all sorts of different things. Whereas at the moment it's a bit kind of confusing. So it generates noise, but it's an envelope, but it's a ratchet, but it's a VCA. It's what? Oh, it's also an envelope follower, so I can plug things in and extract envelopes. Oh, it creates gates. Is it a what? So, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I really like what QuBit do. I think they've got a really interesting take on digital modules and functionality. I love the Surface. It's one of my top 1 modules ever in the world ever. I really got into Data Bender after struggling with it for a bit, but then somehow managed to get underneath it. So there's a lot of cleverness in there. They just, I get slightly frustrated at how initially baffling some of their modules seem to be. LA Circuits are a modular company out in LA, I guess, who are making Eurorack modules that are very much inspired by the Buchla, by the West Coast, where they are, where they're situated, all that grooviness, all the, you know, the drug taking and the bings and the bongs. Anyway, they are producing these wonderful looking modules that are gradually sort of dripping their way out into availability, and now actually have an online shop where you can potentially buy these things. They've just released a Bauhaus, which is a precision oscillator. It looks every bit like a Buchla module, but this is all Eurorack. They've also released a Technicolor, which is a reverb delay line. There's a Suprematist LFO, a Moonjock envelope generator, and a Machinist sample and hold, and other stuff as well. They have this enormous chronograph, I think it's called, sequencer, which is, you know, a proper hardware flicky switches type sequencer, which costs an absolute fortune. But all of these stuff running together is looking just fantastic. Now, it seems to me that as far as sort of marketing and demos goes, they just enjoy making music. So they just get a bit of a band together, throw in a camera or two, you know, play some stuff. It includes a little bit of their modular, and bash, there you go, that's a demo. And you go, well, what? Which bit was yours? Where was your bit in all of that? But they look like they're having a lot of fun. So who are we to interrupt their creative explorations? But, you know, it would be good to have some more focused demonstrations of what their bits and pieces are actually doing. And finally, Gforce software has modelled the heck they have out of the 8-voice Oberheim. What's an 8-voice Oberheim? I have no idea, never seen one before. But what it is, right, so I've now discovered, having looked into it a tiny bit, is you get 8 SEMs. SEMs is a synthesizer expander module that Oberheim made, which is like a square block of solid monosynth. So 2 oscillator monosynth filter, you know, a synth voice essentially all by itself. 8 of those stacked up, wired into a keyboard and a bit of a mixer. There you go. Extraordinary. So Gforce software have emulated that and modelled that into a plugin. The interesting thing about it is that these are 8 individual voices that you have to individually tune and program and sort of patch together. When you normally have a polysynth, you have one knob for the filter, you have one knob for the envelope, and everything else is programmed behind the scenes, and all those are applied to every single voice. With this, you have to do it to each voice individually, and that's quite extraordinary in itself. But it also opens it up to a whole different way of doing synthesis, because you've essentially got 8 monosynths that you're playing with, so you can be setting up drones and intervals and interplay and modulation between the different voices, not just playing them all together. But it also must be exhausting to have to cope with all of that as well. And Gforce understand that, and in their software version they've included the ability to focus in on a single voice and then apply whatever you've done to that to all of them. So you can just set something up and boom, it's done as a polyphonic synthesizer, as opposed to then having to repeat that onto every single one as you go. Sounds brilliant. Apparently it looks like a lot of fun to play with. Very, very sadly, it's Mac only. I mean, Dave from Gforce got in touch with me to say, would I like to give it a go and make a video on it before they release it? And I say, yeah, fantastic. Let's go. Oh, it's Mac only. That's a shame. He says, oh, really? People still use Windows? What? So yeah. People still use Windows. Yeah, I'd say the majority of people do. But there we go. So sadly, at the moment, if you're interested in having a go and you don't have an Apple Mac to run it on, then do let them know, because they're like saying if enough people are interested, then sure, we'll release a Windows version. So yeah, let them know. That would be awesome. Right, well, coming up then, I have in the immediate future, I'm working on a video at the moment on the Impact LX49 Plus, which is a MIDI controller from Nectartech. It's not a new MIDI controller, but it's one that I've been planning to make a video on for a long time, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. So that should be out soon, and it's actually more fascinating than you could possibly imagine. Other things coming up, I want to spend a bit of time making some videos on things that I have that are somehow special. So the Descartes voice I've got sitting there, which I've played with a lot. I want to sit down and spend a day with it and just make a video of what happens with that. I don't claim to understand it, don't claim to be able to give you a tutorial. I just want to play with it, see what happens. I've also got the Poly 8 that's on the floor over there somewhere. 8 oscillators from Wavephonics that I've been asking around on the internet, what on earth am I supposed to do with that? And I've had lots of really great responses, so I'm going to try to plug a load of stuff into that and do a nice video on that next week. That's another plan as well. Lots of DIY to get into, which has kind of been on hold because of my work level has just been really high and I haven't had the time to sit down and do that, including, of course, the Descartes Dream, which I have to get done. Have to get it done. I just got to sit down and solder. That's all it requires. So there we go. And of course, it's live stream time. Let's have a chat. Let's have a chat this Sunday. I believe that the ProSynth guys have now moved their clashing with me synth show to a Friday night. So I think we're clear. I think we're clear for a Sunday. Sunday, 8 o'clock. Is that all right with you? That is the 28th of February, the last day of February. Let's get together. Let's have a chat. Let's talk about all the things that are going on. I feel like I haven't done that for a good while. It would be good just to sit down and talk about stuff. We could have a look at beads, for instance. And also by then I might have the range of Korg Volcas. I've just received a big box of Volcas from Korg, which is awesome, and I should have those set up by Sunday as well. So maybe we'll have a bit of a first play with those. That could be fun. That'll do us. Do go and check out Ben Jordan's video about female music producers, because I think we all need to watch it at least 3 times. I think that would be great. Go and do that, and in the meantime, go make some tunes.